everyone. Good morning on this special day. Today, we are going to continue the topic of breathing according to Kabbalah, to Chassidut, meditation, calming ourselves, taking time to connect to our inner selves. And I'm going to have a special guest speaker, a very special guest speaker. This guest speaker will be coming on the line from Italy. As soon as she comes in, I'll introduce her. She's going to be speaking to us about breath as well, because you'll see in a second why I invited her to be a guest speaker, and I'm going to interview her. It's going to be interesting, and I'll give you some exercises, Bezrat Hashem, at the end or towards the middle of the class, depending on how long we take with this interview. And we'll be sharing how to calm ourselves, how to be in touch with ourselves through breath. I'd like to mention that air, what is air? So we explained till now that air is in Hebrew avir. The word avir in Hebrew is the letters of the word or, which is light, which is basically energy, and the letter yud, which represents chokhmah, wisdom, or what we call in the language of Kabbalah, koach ma, the power of what is, the power of what is, which means the power to connect to something which is so subliminal, so pure, so unaltered, that you are connecting to the source. When David HaMelech, when King David speaks, he says, Ma rabu ma'asecha Hashem. How many are your creations, God? Kulam, all of them, bechokhma asita, were created by what we call chokhmah. This chokhmah, please, if you have any cell phones, if you could put them on I'm sorry, or if you could put yourself on mute, I would greatly appreciate. Thank you so much. Not the cell phones, but the actual video. So chokhmah, koach ma, the power of what is. This is the power to connect to that dimension which is above any shape. Chokhmah, according to Kabbalah, is the seminal thought that comes into one's brain and brings you for a split second a level of perfect clarity on the situation. That is the level of Chokhmah. And at that level of Chokhmah, that's why water is compared to Chokhmah. There is no odor, there's no shape, there is no taste, there is no color. Everything is at its purest level and therefore can be shaped in any way possible. So when we speak about Chokhmah, we're really speaking about the essence of everything. So sometimes we have this level of Chokhmah which illuminates us when we are in trouble and suddenly we have a moment of clarity. Sometimes we see Ashgaha Pratit, we see divine providence, and that divine providence leaves us in a way where we say, Ma, what is this? So we have to understand that avir, air, is or, the letters of or, light, yud. The yud is actually the level of chokhmah. It's that level of complete purity, where there is absolutely nothing is altered, nothing is affected. And that's why when chokhmah, when wisdom, the real wisdom is revealed to man, at that moment, the Alter Rebbe says, all the opposition, all the conflicts in one's mind, all the difficulties, the doubts, everything is suddenly melts, just like wax would melt before a very hot sun. So it explains in Chassidut that avir, air, is chitzoniut ha-chokhmah, reaches the level of the external, the superficial level of chokhmah, which means that when we breathe properly, we can connect to this level, rejuvenate ourselves, and actually transform ourselves. I'm going to be spotlighting a guest that's just joined us from Italy and live from Italy. So let me just do this the proper way. Let's make, I guess I'm going to make them co-host, and we will so I'd like to introduce Miriam Arman. If you could please show us your face. So like this, that I can spotlight you. I think there's a way to do this.
Not to speak, done speaking.
Yes, now that you are, now that you're on, if you could put your video on and spotlight yourself, or co-spotlight yourself. Here we go. Excellent. So let me try to spotlight you with me. Add spotlight. Here we go. So we are both here as we speak. Miriam, if you could just put your camera a little lower so we could see your whole face. So I'd like to introduce to you, believe it or not, my teacher, Miriam Arman. Many, many years ago, when she was living in Florida, I was looking for a voice teacher. And I looked. Obviously, I didn't want, I was looking for a man to be a voice teacher. And finally, I don't know how, by divine providence, Hashem guided my steps, and I met Miriam, but I called her on the phone. The first thing I asked is, I can't listen to a woman sing. So she says, I don't sing. That's not the way I teach, which already gave me an indication of something which was very special, because the fact that I'm not singing to teach you means that I'm not trying to make you become a me. I'm not trying to make you copy what I'm doing. I'm trying to give you the tools to discover within yourself what beautiful tools God gave you. And from inside of you, reveal that inner voice, reveal that inner self, because the inner voice is that inner self. So obviously, one of the great difficulties I had was to stand still. You laugh because you can, those who know me know that I have a difficulty standing still, not because I didn't get a PhD and I got an ADHD instead, but maybe that's the reason. But it was very difficult. I was all over the place. I couldn't stand. I couldn't be what we call in Hebrew mekurka, which means I couldn't stand stable in one place. I was always moving. Maybe you have children like this. The child inside of me still, Baruch Hashem, did not grow up. But it was a great training to focus and to go back to the voice, go back to the feet and the legs being anchored properly. And then we were able to work on the voice. And I think this has a lot to do with the breath, because you have to, when you speak, you have a special way to be able to breathe. In order to speak properly, in order to sing, you need to breathe. Breath is everything. But as I said before, the first step is to be anchored, for Hashem's presence to rest upon us, for God's revelation to happen at an inner level. We need to be able to be anchored. Breath does that for a person and helps us be anchored. Today, the reason I invited Miriam, which is, I'm not going to start telling you everything that she does in Italy and so on, and what she's accomplished in Sfat and so many students and so on and so forth, because I would spend the whole hour talking and then we wouldn't be able to hear her. So instead, the reason I invited Miriam today is that I want her to explain to us a little what happens in the way we breathe, where does breath go, what is breath when it comes to the voice. Because if we tap into what breathing is the proper way, and I know it's going to be a little different than what I taught you, it doesn't matter. I believe that we need to learn from everyone different ways till we find our inner breath, our inner voice.
Yeah.
So before she starts, I would like to ask anybody that's not muted to please mute yourself. Thank you very much. Miriam, please go ahead, and maybe I'll be asking her some questions. If you have some questions, you can write them down as well. And please, bechavod.
Do you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay. Shalom, everybody from Reggio Calabria in Italy, where I live and where I teach and where I work. And of course, everything that I do has to do with the voice, because the voice is the single most important way we communicate, and the way that makes us different from everything else that Hashem has created. But the way we speak and the tone we use and the way we express ourselves has to do with not what's on the outside, but what's on the inside. And in my work, the word breathing doesn't even exist, because what you can take in as far as breath is concerned is totally useless for what is necessary that Hashem gives you on a momentary basis to receive everything that you need from your body. That means that basically everything that God created and everything that is around you is there to come into you. And the air, which is free and is brought in through every pore in your body, through the largest organ of your body, which is your skin, basically provides an enormous, enormous amount of what we call air. Nobody walks down the street breathing, but everybody walks down the street thinking of a million different things, while the body itself is breathing, and Hashem's creation is functioning with air. Air is the most important additive, let's put it this way, to creation in order for all to exist. The main body inside the body that needs air, that you don't think about, because when you think about air, you think about mouth, you think about nose, now maybe you'll think about your skin that's taking in air on a continual basis. But what needs and what owns and what uses all of the air is your brain. What you can't touch, what you have no clue about, what you don't know how it works, Hashem puts it there to create and recreate creation on a second by second basis. So in your own essence, which is your brain, all of the necessary, quote unquote, air, life force is already existing. Your job of HaMedaber, the speaker, is to connect to that. And the connection to that is not via your mouth, because your mouth takes everything in and puts it into a place that has nothing to do with your brain. If you take in a breath through the nose, also that goes down and it has nothing to do with the brain. But when you connect with the highest place, with the most extraordinary potential of your brain, you have to use the only soul expression, and that's the eyes. Now, the eyes are something so amazing because the eyes have 12 muscles that are 250 times stronger than anything that you could possibly ever imagine using. They have a movement that is only one directional. Everything goes back and in, and everything goes up and connects directly with Hashem. Every single word, every single sound, every single movement of sound has to be connected to Hashem. And when that is the case, you don't feel your voice. You're never hoarse. You're never not in control of what you speak and how you speak. As a matter of fact, you can't speak anything that is not truth.
Can you explain to us what you mean? I mean, we need to breathe. If we don't breathe, if air doesn't come in, so there's no sound that can exist. What do you mean by the eyes? I understand by the mouth, I understand by the nose. What do you mean by the eyes? You mean by the nose, where the eyes are?
No. The first thing is to understand that breathing naturally is not done by you. The amount of air that you can bring into your system is minimal. The body, the pores of the skin take in the oxygen. The oxygen is continual and flowing, and only in the direction of up, because the body is 98.6 degrees, everything rises. And of course, everything rises to the brain. Now, the nose is a very, very small vessel, but it has a tremendous expansion internal, and that is 6 canals that all connect to the top. So by just thinking to open your nostrils, one to the left and one to the right, and simply thinking that the air is rising, you're already feeling immediately where your whole cranium expands. Why? Because the air is entering. At that moment, at the same moment, when you know, of course, knowledge is the first thing to understand. There are 6 muscles in each eye that hold the eye in. And the minute the air reaches the upper canals, which are right at the bridge of your nose, at the same level as your pupils, at the same level as the tips of the ears, and the largest opening of the cranial cavity, that's where all the air sits, turns, rotunds around, circulates around. All of your thoughts are there. All of your words are there. All of your sounds are there. All of your emotions are there. Everything is connected and collected in one place. And the only place where you can't touch, and the only place where you can connect yourself directly to Hashem is right there. Chokhmah, Binah, Da'at, everything is sitting completely and totally in that place. Once you're able to connect, and if you read Tanya very, very carefully, you understand that the Alter Rebbe completely knew and completely was familiar with that space. Because when he talks about the essence of a human being, he doesn't talk about the essence as being physical, but he talks about the essence as being mental and up. So the connection to the voice, whether or not it's speaking or singing, really doesn't make any difference, because both are using exactly the same instrument and are using the exact same formula, are always and forever connected to Hashem.
So basically what you're telling us, in other words, is that the only role that we really have is the opening of the nostrils and the intention of that this air comes through the eyes, right? And basically, almost like in a circular way, we are breathing it inside of us, and it surrounds the membrane of the brain. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that you cannot do any of that. You have to know this, to think this, so your body does this, because that's the natural movement of air and the natural movement of air inside the cranium. It's not like you can do it. You can't do it. It exists because Hashem created it that way. The only thing that you need to know is how to connect to that. One way to connect is by opening the nostrils, by knowing the bridge of the nose is the actual entrance. The eyes are the actual entrance of conversation. When you understand that everything is situated here, instead of thinking of the throat and thinking of Gehinnim and thinking of Meitzarim, limitation, which is what the throat has. And instead you think of Ein Sof, which is brain, which is Hashem, which is opening, then you have a whole different way of projecting your sound into the universe. Okay, sound has to reconnect with air, has to reconnect with its source. And the source, obviously, is Hashem. So the higher the entrance, the higher the possibility.
Okay. So basically, what we have here, from what I understand, just to make it practical, we have the body absorbs air through the skin, through the mouth, through the nose, but the natural way of the body to absorb air is at its highest level, right? That air goes up. And since it goes up, the only thing I need to do is to connect to what's already happening, right? And just be more open to that concept, even though it might seem to us as something which is foreign because we've never really been educated this way, right? Go ahead, Miriam. I see you want to say something.
For your information, your voice is a whole decimal higher. Your speaking is completely moved.
Of course, because what happens is I'm traumatized. I'm going to tell you about my trauma. When I would take voice lessons, as soon as I would go into the mouth or into the nose, right away, Miriam would become my mirror and tell me how my voice is like this instead of just going up.
Floating,
as soon
floating.
as I hear a what? Floating
Yes.
naturally, and just floating on air. You know, I was used to hearing singers sing, and Miriam made me understand something that Rab Shmuel Munkes said to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneor of the Adi, the author of Tanya, said was about to go to jail. They were going to imprison him for the accusations and so on and so forth they had against him. So he went to see his famed Chassid, Rab Shmuel Munkes. Rab Shmuel Munkes, he said to him, what should I do? Should I run away or should I go to jail? Rab Shmuel Munkes answered him something very interesting. He said, well, if you're a Rebbe, if you're a real tzaddik, there's no reason for you to run away. Hashem will protect you and everything will be good. And if you're not a real tzaddik and you're not a real Rebbe, you deserve to go to jail. Said, why? He says, because you took away from your followers the full enjoyment of worldly matters, which means by teaching us meditation, by teaching us contemplation, by teaching us about the greatness of God, making it something which is real, practical, tangible to us, in our understanding, we took some more pleasure in Hashem, so we know the truth of Hashem in a closer reality to us, and therefore the pleasures of this world are less real, so we can never fully enjoy. So that's exactly what happened with me before I took the lessons. I would enjoy tremendously a lot of singers that would sing from their throat. And once I learned this lesson and this technique, this way of connecting to the floating air, and that suddenly voice, just like a violin, right? It's that space inside the violin that permits the voice, the voice of the violin, the sound of the violin to be appreciated. It says once you make that space, which has to do with what we spoke about at the beginning of our class today with chokhmah, which chokhmah is the concept of bitul, of self-nullification. So let go of your ego, let go of your feeling of voice, let go of your feeling of self, and just let air float naturally. Let your voice speak naturally. So at that moment, suddenly I was hearing singers that I used to love, and I can't enjoy them anymore. And it's all her fault. But it's okay. I forgive her, because that's the purpose. The purpose is you want to connect to that level of breath, which we're not at all at that level yet. And hopefully, Bezat Hashem, with our lessons, we'll learn how to connect to that level. I just like to mention what the Rabbi Chaim Vital says. Rabbi Chaim Vital says in Etz Chaim, Shar Ahaf, there's actually a whole chapter dedicated to ozen chotem peh, ear, nose, and throat, believe it, and mouth, which talks about this. And according to Kabbalah, he says that there is air inside the ears, there's air inside the nose, and there's air from the mouth, from the nose, and from the ears. He says normally there should have been air coming out of the eyes as well. The only reason Hashem did not make that we should breathe from our eyes is because if we did so, the quality and the power of this type of air would be so powerful that we would, with our eyes, be able to burn anything, just like it happened to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he put his eyes on the field, it started to burn. And we see many times in the Talmud, Natan boenav v'nasa gal shel atzamot, with one's eyes, rabbis would put to death people. So that's a great power in the eyes. So Miriam is already taking us to a much, much, much higher level, but at the same time, it's a level of what I would say freedom. It's total freedom. You're not caught up with yourself. You just breathe. You make that, how do you call it? You open the nostrils, as she said, and
instead of breathing, instead of the word breathing, maybe it could be used in your description, the word connecting.
Connect, yes.
Because the connect does it all, and it does it all in one place where all the connections of every single form of movement in your body, obviously in your instrument, which is in the throat, obviously in every part of your body, is connected there. So when you talk about connecting to the air, connecting to the space, connecting to the power, connecting to the muscles, it's very much greater than the limitation of the word breathing, which is very square and has no potential.
Okay, so I will not agree with everything Miriam says. I will say that breath has potential. It's you have to, when it comes to yourself, you need to learn how to breathe and and how to fill your diaphragm, fill your diaphragm with air, that it should be able to really oxygenate your body. But that we'll talk about when she's not here. We'll talk about next class. What I think is important, what we need to take out of this, and what we need to take out of this is that there's really two elements. There's the element of air, and there's the element of what Miriam was saying, which is connecting. And the connect, which really happens at a mind level. You see, I just listened to what she said, and right away my voice already went a pitch higher, because that's what happens. Once you start talking a higher language, then your mind goes to a higher dimension, to a higher level of breathing, or connecting to that breath, or connecting to that air that's already there. And then there's a lot of things that happen, even in your physiology. There's many doctors, natural doctors, which have been able to rewire the brain of people by making them connect to that level, by changing the way one breathes. And it really, we have so much in what's called the fascia, right? That membrane which is between the skin and the muscle. There is so much in the chum of the brain, which is the membrane which surrounds the brain. There's so much emotion, so much things which are stored there. We'll look, for example, in physical therapy, there's a special type of massage, which is called Rolfing, where a person will just give you a little touch like this, nothing much. On one hand, it's not going to hurt you. On the other, you'll be screaming as if he was pushing it very, very hard. Why? Because we store certain things inside of us. So as we breathe properly and as we connect to that level and we start, how do you call it, freeing our brains of all this pressure that we have inside of us. So I think what we need to take from today is, and I know that I said that I was going to do some practical stuff. Bezat Hashem will do this next week. I think what we need to take from today, it's that, you know, when you're on a sailboat and there's a storm going on, if you're going to stand at one extreme or the other extreme of the sailboat, you're going to go through the whole drama of what's happening, and you'll be emotionally and a mess and unstable. If you go towards the center of the sailboat where the mast is, that is the place that's the most stable. So I think what Miriam is telling us, in other words, is one of the things we need to do on a regular basis is just reconnect to the top, reconnect to the center, just reconnect to what's already there, which means as we feel ourselves being pulled in many directions, let's stop and reconnect. And it's okay, even if you have to reconnect 10 times a day, but you teach yourself to reconnect and reconnect and reconnect. Eventually, you will see that when you're at the center, the whole world could be crumbling around you, but you know to find your inner voice. And then there's something that's very, very special that's going to happen. We know that over there, there's what we call, what is that called? Is that gland called? The pineal gland, right? This is what it says in the,
third eye.
The third, so they call it the third eye, they call it the pineal gland.
The pineal gland is in exactly the same place as the third eye and is an opening. It's a real opening where all of the sound and the word come through to connect again on the outside.
Correct. And
very, very important.
And it's not by accident that pineal is Pene-el, the face of Hashem. This is the place where the prophets would receive their prophecy, which means the intuition of a person, the gut feeling, right? It's there. So at the moment that you just to reconnect and say, you know what, I know this is happening. I might not understand it, but I'm going to start just opening myself up. I'm going to calm myself 1 second. I'm just going to connect to that level and see how really breath is happening at that level. Breathing is happening. Air is happening. I'm just connecting to what's already happening. You will see how slowly but surely you will free yourself, not because you're fighting to free yourself. You see, when it comes from the throat, the voice comes from the throat or the mouth, you're trying to free yourself. Here, you're just going to a free place. You're just connecting to freedom without having to make the effort. And that's true freedom. So Bezat Hashem, we have to conclude. It's 11 a.m. I want to thank you, Miriam, for joining us from, what is that place in Italy? Can you say the name again?
Reggio Calabria.
Reggio Calabria. That's the only, okay, so mille grazie. Grazie mille.
My pleasure. Bezrat Hashem. Be well, all of you.
Thank you so much. For next week, Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach, we are going to learn how air is really a sack. It is a vessel for something which is called ruach, which is called the spirit. We're going to learn how to crack the sack and be able to tap in to the ruach, to the spirit. God bless you all. Have a fantastic week. And thank you all again. Shavua tov u'mazel tov.
Shavua tov. Thank you.